repeat, and you probably noticed I haven't done very many water movies since Jaws. The experience of making Jaws was horrendous for me. I don't want to sound ungrateful because I'm completely grateful to the audience embracing the movie and the movie being such a phenomenon, which basically gave me what I had always dreamed about, was A, being a movie director, and B, having Final Cut, and Jaws gave me freedom. Here's the message. We're going to implant this message in your brain. If you have any ambition about learning more about yourself, you're going to follow your God-given instincts, and you're going to follow all the signs, and you're going to get to the place where the party is going to occur.
Erickson, David A.
All I was interested in was Einstein's theory of relativity and space-time continuums, and I just love the idea that if they were truly taken off our planet, they could come back the same age as when they were hijacked in the 1920s or 30s or 40s. But I didn't have any backstory, or I didn't have any other motivation other than it would be really cool to have the people from Flight 19. I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if they came back at the end and then a whole new group of astronauts go off with them again. He was chosen. They sensed something in him that they felt they would learn more about the human race from innocence. Maybe he was like a child himself. And at the end of the story, Richard Dreyfuss character, who sort of acts like a child throughout the whole picture, because he returns to his childhood to actively pursue his dream at the expense of his responsibilities to his family. And maybe it's the child in all of us that the aliens were more interested in observing and investigating than the astronauts who were trained to communicate with a higher intelligence. The difference in when I wrote the story in my 20s and what I would have done today is, I don't think today, with being a dad of 7 kids, I would have let my Richard Dreyfuss character actually get on the mothership and abandon his family to this alien obsession and leave the planet. I'm not sure I would have done that today, but in my 20s, it was something that was absolutely would have been my choice. Get me on that mothership. I'm curious. I want to explore along with these guys. George came back from Star Wars a nervous wreck. He didn't feel Star Wars came up to the vision that he had initially had. He felt he had just made this little kids movie, and he came to Mobile, Alabama, where I was shooting on this humongous set. And George hung out with me for a couple of days and looked around and said, "Oh my God, your movie's going to be so much more successful than Star Wars. This is going to be the biggest hit of all time. I can't believe the set, and I can't believe what you're getting, and oh my goodness." He said, "I'll tell you what, I'll trade points with you. You want to trade some points?" He said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you 2.5% of Star Wars if you give me 2.5% of Close Encounters." So I said, "Sure, I'll gamble with that. Great." And I think I came out on top of that bet. I think I did a lot better than George. Both of our movies were wildly profitable. Close Encounters made so much money, rescued Columbia from bankruptcy, and the most money I had ever made on a movie before was from Close Encounters. Close Encounters was just a meager success story, and Star Wars was a phenomenon. And of course, I was the happy beneficiary of a couple of net points in that movie, which I am still seeing money on today. I got a chance to make fun of my own movie, Jaws, and I sent Jaws up in the opening scene, and that was my idea. I wanted to do the whole, I wanted to even get Susan Baccalini, who played Chrissy Walken's, back to play the same character. I imitated the same shots, tried to get the sun in the same place to glisten the water, the same way we did it in Martha's Vineyard. We previewed the film in Dallas, Texas. It was received by the audience. 800 people couldn't stop laughing. And I thought, oh my God, I have a comedy hit. And for the first time in my life, a comedy set piece actually worked and the audience couldn't stop laughing. The second that scene was over and the actual movie began, there were about 4 laughs in the next 2 hours, and that was it. And I think what killed the comedy was the amount of destruction and the sheer noise level. audience, and I was watching in the preview, that many people were watching the film with their hands over their ears, holding their ears because they were being assaulted by all the noise coming out of the speakers. And I think it's not that we dubbed it too loud. I just blew too much stuff up. Pauline Kael's, she had a radio show. Off the air, she said to me, now you have, I hear 1941 coming out. She said, well, we're all waiting for that one. You know you're not going to get off as easy as you got off with your first two films. We're waiting for you to fail. And in so many words, she pretty much just said to me, you know, we've got our knives sharpened because this better be the greatest thing anybody's ever made or you're going to go down in flames. And I'll never forget her warning, almost like sight unseen, whether it's a good picture or a bad picture, it's your turn to be slapped. I was kind of riding the whirlwind. And when I did 1941, I have to tell you, I felt like I was made of Teflon. I felt that anything I put on film was going to succeed. I felt invincible. And I think, in a sense, at that point in my life, the best thing that could have happened to me was the drubbing that 1941 got both from the critics and the public. And I tell you something, I sobered up so quickly after that was over. I just became so precious and indulgent about getting everything right. I did 20 takes on inserts that should have been done by a second unit. I shouldn't even done the insert. I shot all the miniatures myself. I directed every single miniature. I should have had a miniature unit come in and shoot the Ferris wheel rolling down the pier. I had a first unit production company, and they were being paid first unit dollars to shoot what should have been second unit miniatures with a pared down 20-person miniature unit. And I couldn't let go. I couldn't share the workload with anyone. And I learned the greatest lessons of my career just from the experience of 1941. George Lucas asked me what I was doing next, and I said I wasn't sure, but I wanted to try again to get Cubby Broccoli to let me direct one of the James Bond films. Cubby, by the way, had twice turned me down. And George said, I've got something better than James Bond. It's called Raiders of the Lost Ark. So he had the title, he had the character. George had the idea that they were going after an antiquity called the Lost Ark of the Covenant, which I knew a little bit about. I should have known a lot more about it because I'm Jewish and George isn't. But but George knew a lot of the history of when it went missing, and I knew a little bit of what it was about, what the mythology was about it. I did the Raiders movie because it was fun to do. And it was also came at a good time because 1941 had just gone down in flames, and I went from the disaster of 1941 to my first day of shooting in La Rochelle, France, on Raiders of the Lost Ark. So in a sense, Raiders sort of rescued me from, you know, getting self-involved with, oh dear, the movie's going to be a big failure and all the critics hate it. And I think by the time I did Raiders of the Lost Ark, my next picture, I was humbled. Every single shot was storyboarded. I was 14 days under schedule. And I basically gave George Lucas a lot of credit because George just said, look, you can go over schedule for Columbia Universal on 1941, but you're my friend. You can't go over schedule with basically what is the money I'm responsible for. That's all he had to say. He wasn't on the set. He wasn't over my shoulder. He came to visit sometimes, but he wasn't haunting me, and he wasn't my on-the-set producer. I didn't see him that often. But when I saw him, he would always nudge me about the schedule and homework and be prepared. And I think Raiders of the Lost Ark was probably the most prepared I've ever been in my career to direct a movie, and it paid off.
Meet me at Omar's. Be ready for me. I'm going after that truck.
Hello.
I don't know. I'm making this up as I go.